Welcome to the Ruby and Pearls Knitting Podcast. My name's Leah. I'm coming to you from West Wales in the UK, where I live with my partner and our two dogs, Ruby and Pearl. Thank you so much for joining me today for episode 10 of my knitting podcast. I can't believe it's already episode 10. And I'm filming today on a Saturday, and I don't normally have a Saturday off, so I feel this is a little bit spontaneous, and I'm a bit warm because it's May and it's oddly warm here in the UK, so thank you so much for joining me today. You can find me as LeaAmbarKnits on Ravelry and on Instagram. I am not particularly active on Ravelry, but I do sell my patterns on there. And if you'd like to chat to me, Instagram is the best place to reach me. I have been away for a few weeks, and I thought I'd briefly touch on where I've been, what's been going on, and I've got a couple of other admin things to sort, and then I've got 3 finished objects and 2 works in progress and 1 failed project to talk about. So, where have I been? I have been on holiday. I went to visit my family in Switzerland, as I'd mentioned in the last episode, and I thought about filming beforehand, but I was just not quite in the mood for it. And since then, I've had a visitor, so one of my friends came back with me, which was really, really nice. So I've just been, I've been really busy. And I'm going back to work in a couple of days, so I thought this might be a good time to quickly catch up with you. So, before I start with the projects, another thing that I wanted to talk to you about admin-wise quickly. I've been doing a lot of thinking because I've been speaking to you about a couple of CALs that I was either hosting or taking part in, and I wanted to give you a quick update on those. So firstly, there was a Musselburgh knit along that I was part of that I'm not sure whether that is still currently running, but I've basically shelved both of my Musselburghs until the cooler weather, or until the mood takes me to continue knitting on them. So that is no longer on my radar. The second knit along I want to talk to you about was the Get Ahead Mal that I was hosting with my friend Emily from Emily Knit, and we were being a bit flexible on when it was going to end, and we kept changing the end time, and I think we've decided we're going to let it run for another couple of weeks, and any entries have mostly come through to Emily. So if you want to know whether you've won anything in that knit along, please keep an eye on Emily's channel. Well, I'm out of practice. She will be announcing winners on there, and everything will run through her. I'm really grateful that she's taken that task off me. So that is one of the CALs that I want to talk to you about. The other CAL was the Midland CAL that I was hosting, and I've decided to terminate that knit along. And I wanted to quickly explain to you why. So the Midland CAL was a knit along for the Midland cardigan by Laura Penrose that was extremely popular when it first was released, and loads of people bought the pattern, and rightfully so. It's a really wonderful pattern. I was part of the test knit group, and I wanted to knit another one, and I thought it'd be nice to have a little community where people could join and all knit the Midland cardigan. But I think the biggest error that I made, firstly, was that I wasn't ready to cast mine on yet, so I couldn't really actively be part of the chat. And I was hoping to mostly be part of sort of a group of people who could give a bit of guidance if you got stuck, if you're a bit more of a beginner knitter. And the other error that I made is that I decided to host it on Discord, where if you create a link to a Discord channel, that link expires, I believe, after about a week or so. So when I created that link, basically I announced it in my stories and I put a few things out there, but if you didn't join straight away, you were kind of not part of it anymore, and I would have had to constantly update people and put it out there that it was still running. So that was an error on my part. And the other error, like I said, is that I didn't cast on straight away, so I couldn't really actively be part of the chat. And I was really hoping, because it was such a popular pattern, that it would be sort of a self-running process, that I wouldn't really have to be active in the chat. But not a lot has happened on there, to be perfectly honest, so I have decided that I am going to cancel that knit along. I never sort of promised any kind of prizes or anything on there, so I feel like it should be okay for me to do so. And I've learnt from this experience that I really need to be a little bit more cautious before starting a knit along, have a proper plan, and then not suddenly feel under pressure to deliver something I can't. So yeah, I'm so sorry. I am going to be better when it comes to knit alongs. I think maybe it was a little bit premature for me to start doing knit alongs when I had a really, fresh YouTube channel. Anyway, let's talk about finished objects. The first finished object was one of my whips last episode. And it is the Kaleidoscope sweater by Vergara. I will pop a picture in as well. And I would be wearing it if I wasn't really, really hot. This is she. It is a stunning top-down circular yoke sweater. It comes with DK and fingering weight options, but at quite a loose gauge for DK or fingering weight. Sort of a regular length. And you've got either tapered sleeve or sort of a straight sleeve with a gather at the end, which is what I went for. And I knit mine in Adrifield Duo in the shade Rope, which is a cotton wool blend. I think it's merino. And I used, obviously, the star of the show is very, very many beads. And I can highly recommend this pattern. If you have never knit with beads, it's really not difficult, and Vergara has some amazing patterns out there for beaded things. So I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out. The only reason I stalled on it a little bit, and the only criticism I have for the pattern, is that my size, which I think was size 2, recommended just over 700 meters of yarn. And I should have known that I've never knit a DK weight sweater with full length sleeves that only required 700 meters in my size. Normally I need anywhere between 1,000 and 1,200 meters. So I should have known that there must be something wrong there. And there was, unfortunately. So I had to buy more yarn and hope that the dye lots wouldn't be too much of an issue. And they weren't. It worked out perfectly, and I'm really, really pleased with this finished object. So yeah, really, really happy, and highly, highly recommend this pattern. My second finished object is not the other whip that I showed you last time. I'm going to touch on that after the finished objects. My second finished object is the Storm Sweater by petiteknit, which was a resounding success. I'm really, really pleased that I finally finished this. I'm sure you're all familiar with this pattern. It is a DK weight top-down sweater featuring panels of different knit and purl textures that are not difficult to knit, but really, really effective. It is, like I say, DK weight, drop shoulder, top down, with all the neat finishings we're used to from petiteknit, and I can highly recommend it. I knit mine in King Cole Orchard in the shade Snow Sweet, which is a wool acrylic blend, because I wanted something machine washable, seeing as I decided to knit it in cream. And I'm also open to dyeing it if it ever gets stained. So that's kind of a future option for me. And the only thing is, this yarn is a thinner DK, and petiteknit sample was made in Peer Gynt, which is a thick DK. So mine is much more loose, which is perfect for these sort of spring days. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. Highly recommend. And I kind of fancy making a kids one next, because the pattern's so addictive. You finish one panel, by the time you're bored of it, the next panel starts. So yeah, especially after doing an adult one, I think a kids one would fly off the needles. Last but not least is this cardigan that I want to just hold up quickly. This is a cardigan that I knit as my travel project, and I knit it in sirdar, jewel spun, ombre, something like that. I'm going to put the name here, but essentially it's this enormous ball of yarn, and it changes colour throughout, and there's loads of different ones. And the pattern was a pattern also by Sirdar that came with the yarn. It was part of their range, and in my local yarn shop you could buy the yarn and you could get one of the patterns with it, which is what I did. And I knitted this throughout my travels to Switzerland and back, and basically finished it on the last day. I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. And controversially, I knit this cardigan in panels and I seamed it. And you can see that especially on the sides here. There we are. Now, I know a lot of people don't enjoy seaming garments. I'm going to pop it on while I'm not too hot, just to show you it on as well. And I know, yeah, lots of people don't enjoy seaming. And in the pattern picture, I saw that essentially it didn't work out like this, where you can see I've got really matching sleeves to the body on both sides. And in the pattern photos, it was sort of like dark up here, dark down here. It was very much like yin and yang sort of, it was very much balanced. And my cardigan didn't turn out all that balanced. But I had the option to either sew on the matching sleeve on either side or swap them around. And I've decided to go light side and dark side. And I'm really pleased with how that turned out. The main reason I would highly recommend with a yarn like this that you knit something flat and seamed is the following. When you have a colour changing yarn, imagine I knit this cardigan top down seamlessly, right? I would have front pieces potentially, unless it was, okay, let's say it was a raglan or a round yoke where you don't have actual panels in the yoke, but it's all done in one go. You'd have a beautiful continuous change of colour. You would then have a more continuous change of colour in the body. It would all work seamlessly and beautifully. But you'd have sleeve stitches that you then have to pick up and knit from. So first of all, you're going to have to make sure that you don't end up with a really harsh line where you start knitting your sleeve, and then you have to make sure that the other sleeve matches, because I find that if something only just doesn't match, it looks a lot worse than if something doesn't match at all. And this is a big issue that I've had with a lot of colour changing yarns. So I finally saw the light when it came to colour changing yarn, and I realised seamed is the answer. And I don't hate seaming, I don't hate purling. The only issue I have with this is that I personally would have liked a little bit more length in the body. So I'm going to get up quickly and show you. So my hips are here, and you can see where that hits me, and I would have liked a tiny bit more length, and obviously you can't go back in and add length on a seamed piece that's knit bottom up. So that's my main gripe with bottom up seamed garments. Also, I knit the third size, and sizes 1 to 3 recommend 1 ball of that yarn. Sizes 4 to 7 recommend 2 balls. So I was a little bit worried about running out of yarn, because I was like at the end of the spectrum of what would be okay to use just 1 ball for. So for that reason, I didn't end up adding any length, because I was worried, because you can't tell when you start knitting a seamed garment how much yarn you're going to have and whether you're going to have enough. By the way, Pearl has joined me. I hope you might be able to hear some panting, but she's finished her chew, so she's come to see what I'm up to. So yeah, that is the only reason why I maybe prefer knitting things seamlessly from the top down, because I can add length and because I have a long torso. But otherwise, I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out, and I would highly recommend. And these balls of yarn, I can't remember how many grams they were, but I think they're over 1,000 meters of Aran weight yarn, and they're £20. I mean, I think that's a bit of a steal. So, deep breath. I'm not used to all this talking. That is my third finished object. Actually, I'm used to I've done a lot of talking for the last couple of weeks, but not to a camera. So I'm always a little bit anxious when I do this. The other work in progress that I had on the needles when we last spoke was my Colette sweater. And I don't want to drag this out. I'm going to very briefly talk about why this has been shelved. If you've been here before, you might want to skip forward a few minutes, because I'm going to talk about my Colette troubles and blown yarn troubles. So just to recap briefly, a couple of years ago I knit the Colette sweater in Yarnsmith's Pebble Haze, which is a blown yarn. It's a cotton acrylic blown yarn, and if you're not familiar with blown yarn, essentially one fibre creates a mesh tube and a different fibre is blown into that tube, which gives it both the thickness and also the colour. So the tube itself is commonly either white or sort of a nylon-y see-through colour, depending on what it's made of. The issue that I came across with that sweater, and I'll pop a picture in because I think I found a picture, is that one of the balls, or two of the balls, were significantly different in how much fibre was blown into the tube. So it wasn't so much like a dye lot issue where you could just over dye the whole thing. There was actually more fibre there or less fibre there. So you can't really over dye it or fix it in any kind of way. The other issue I had, and the other reason why it wasn't a success, was I had major gauge issues. And at the time I didn't quite figure out why. I was just cross with the project. I think I donated it. And I've been seeing a few projects recently from other people, and I really, really wanted to knit it again. In the meantime, I had several other issues with blown yarn. I showed that to you on the Pride and Pearls cardigan. I had a different cardigan in Adriafil Walcott where I had problems. And yeah, I just remembered that this patchiness, sometimes on a whole ball or in parts of a ball of blown yarn, is a problem. So what did I do? I cast on a Colette sweater again in blown yarn, namely Adriafil Walcott. I've also ordered more Yarnsmith Pebble Haze because I do love that kind of yarn. It's really lightweight and soft and fluffy and commonly machine washable compared to something else that's fluffy. So I cast another one on. I showed it to you in my last podcast. And things started going downhill after the podcast, unfortunately. So the gauge issues I managed to combat because Sari Nordlund recommended a very weird combination of gauge, yarn and needle size. So if you plan to knit the Colette sweater or possibly also the tee, please be mindful of that because she recommends a 3.5mm needle and a 20 stitch gauge on DK8 yarn, which for me is very hard to achieve in stockinette and even harder to achieve in cables that pull things together. I had to go up to 4.5mm needle, and I tend to be a looser knitter. I'm more or less average. I'm slightly on the loose end, so if anything I normally have to size down. So that was really, really odd. But once I figured that out, I sorted that out and everything was fine with the gauge. The problem for me was that I was playing slight yarn chicken. Now, I don't know if this is a Sari Nordlund problem. I know a lot of people flagged that when it came to the book club cardigan. I saw a lot of people talking about it there. So I don't know if she tends to write her patterns with sort of a lower estimate, but I was starting to get worried about yarn quantities, and I bought mine end of line from my local yarn shop. So I thought, okay, I'm going to knit the sleeves first before I finish the body and see where I'm at. The issue with the Colette sweater, and I'll put a picture of the actual garment, the pattern picture in, is that you've got a really long repeat. And while Sari recommends that you either do a full repeat before doing the hem or half a repeat, for me it really had to be a full repeat. So I couldn't really cut corners in terms of yarn by cropping the sweater. So I knit the first sleeve, and that ball of yarn that I was using that night, which was quite dark at the time, had lots of little flecks of purple in it. So it was a lilac-y colour that I was using, and they were really like quite winey purple. And at first I was going to cut them out, and then I thought, oh well, I'm just going to leave them in and they'll be a bit of a feature. It doesn't really matter. I don't know why I was thinking that, because the next morning when I saw it, it very much looked like I bled on it or something. It had sort of that colour. Plus, unlike with a spun yarn where you can sort of pick little fluffs out that might have sort of gotten in, you can't do that with a blown yarn. And also that one ball I used wasn't enough for the sleeve, so I knew at this point I definitely wasn't going to have enough, because one of the balls I purchased was accidentally a partial ball that had crept its way back into the bag after someone made a sample for the shop. So anyway, the bottom line was I wasn't going to have enough yarn. I was going to have yet another Colette sweater with problems, and I just pulled the needles out and chucked it in a corner. Now, I might come back to this because I still have the desire to have a Colette sweater and in that colour, so that might happen. But it's been a few weeks and I thought I'd just leave it be while I went on holiday and see if I ever had the desire to come back to it. So that's my Colette sweater story. And now I thought I would show you my 2 active whips. I've also got quite a few acquisitions, but I don't really want this to be an acquisition channel. I want to show you what I'm currently working on, and those yarns will be used at some point, but I did do a fair bit of yarn shopping on my holiday. My first active whip is the Courage Henley by Tori, which is a pattern that I test knit maybe a year ago, and you might have seen it in my every sweater I've ever knit video that I put out a little while ago, and I've decided to give it away because I knit it at the time in a yarn that I'd had an experience with before in a different garment that grew loads after a couple of washes. So I used the same needle size, made the assumption that it was going to grow the same because it's exactly the same yarn, just a different colour, and it didn't grow. So it didn't quite fit how I wanted it to. And then I also knit the other Henley pattern that Tori has, I think it's called the Skyline Henley, and that one turned out a bit too small as well, and I would like to have a Henley in my life. So I cast on again, and I haven't done the neck edgings yet, so it looks a little bit, it looks really weird. But essentially it is a top-down saddle shoulder Henley pattern. You might be able to see here, along there will be a border all the way around, and there will be quite a few buttons along the front here. So it looks a bit funky at the moment, but I just wanted to show you. It is a worsted weight pattern. And the yarn I am using is a yarn called Baby Cashmerino from a yarn brand that is, as far as I'm aware, a Swiss brand. It's called Jakob. So I don't know if you can get that anywhere else, but I love this colour. It is like a beautifully minty colour. I don't know if it's showing up properly on camera. And I'm holding it together with Rico Design Make It Tweed, which is that lovely hold along strand of yarn that you can buy with which you can make things tweedy. So I thought I'd show you the yarns separately. There we go. And it's just giving it a little bit of interest. I don't know if you can see, it's also got little lilac-y flecks. See if it'll focus without my face there. I hope that's in focus. Apologies if it isn't. And really, really enjoyable. The only reason I sort of stalled on it was because I was doing a lot of sort of TV knitting, and trying to make sure I was grabbing both strands all the time was actually quite difficult. So I shelved it for a little while because I've also got a test knit on the go, and I wanted to make some good progress on that. So I wanted to show you that now. This is the Lotus Lake Sweater by Anniina Juuti from LeaAmbarKnits, and I've made so much progress over the last few days. I'm really, really pleased. So it is a top-down drop shoulder design, and what I think is really interesting about this design is that you have decreases at the underarm going in, so the drop of the shoulder is further down, and then there isn't the bulk under the arm, which I think is really, really cool. And I think what was interesting, because I've got a different body type to Anniina, so I thought it was interesting that I noticed, for me personally with a relatively small chest, I actually ended up having to size up with this pattern because there's a decrease happening here and my hips are quite wide compared to my bust. I had to make sure that I had enough positive ease at the hem. So that is one thing you need to look out for, but there is some guidance in the pattern, so you will definitely not have any problems with that. And the star of the show is the lace at the bottom, which is not going to look great right now because I haven't blocked it yet. But there it is. Ta-da! And this colour is also not showing up properly. It is warmer in shade than it looks on camera. And it is Adriafil Elixir, which is a DK weight yarn. It has cotton, linen and silk in it. It's really, really lovely, and I can't wait to wear this sort of for summer evenings. I've just picked up for the first sleeve, and the sleeve on the cuff also has that beautiful lace. And that's one thing that I nearly brought this on holiday with me because it requires the same needle size for the entire pattern. And I thought that would be really, really handy, so I wouldn't have to like play around with loads of needles and just bring the one needle. But then I got sucked into the other project, so that is why I ended up knitting that cardigan. But I'm really enjoying this. I think it's really fun that, you know, you've got sort of the fun of the construction at the top and the sort of shaping of the pattern, and then you've got a bit of TV knitting. Well, you've got some shaping at the underarm, then you've got a bit of TV knitting, and before you know it, you're on the lace at the bottom, and now the same thing on the sleeve. So it's a very, very engaging knit, and I really, really enjoy it. The one modification that I've made with permission from Anniina is that I did a faux seam down the side, and the way it worked out in terms of size, it was an even number of stitches. So I did 2 purl stitches at the underarm, going all the way down to the lace. And the main reason I'm doing this is because in a plant-based yarn, I find it extremely hard to weave in the ends invisibly. You can always see it really well, they always pop out. There's just a lot of problems with plant-based fibres for me and weaving in ends, especially on a looser gauge. So what I've done is I've created this faux seam, and I've been weaving in my ends. Don't know if you can see it anywhere. Nobody can. I can see an error that I've made. I made an error there, look. I'm gonna have to fix that somehow. But I think most of my ends were on the other side, so you might be able to see here. I've used this knit column here to weave in my ends, which has been really, really successful because you cannot see it on the right side at all, and it doesn't create any bulk because it sort of sits back. So I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out so far, and I can't wait to wear it. I think that is everything I have for you today. This has gone way quicker than I thought it would because it's been a few weeks, and I sort of thought, okay, this is going to be like a 1 hour video, and instead I've flown through it in under 30 minutes. So I would love to hear from you what you're currently knitting on, what projects you're enjoying, what you're looking forward to in terms of your knitting, and I would love to get some feedback. Am I going too fast? Is this pace good for you? Is this length good for you? Would you like a longer video? I haven't really currently got another sort of knitting related topic that I want to walk you through. That has been on my mind, so that's why I haven't got anything for sort of knit and chat with you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe and leave me a comment, that would be really, really lovely. And happy knitting. See you soon. Bye bye.